What's going on, folks? My name's Josh. You can call me Anorian, and it's time for another Anor of Convallaria video. And today we are looking at the Merchant King himself, Acambe. Now, obviously this video is a little later than they've usually been. I normally like to have these out before the characters drop. I got flown out to LA this week for a thing I'll be able to talk more about in a couple weeks. And unfortunately, I actually had a video ready, had it start uploading, had all that. Then I get to my connection in Atlanta and see that there was a corruption issue and it wasn't going to upload. So that was great. So basically I had to record this right when I get back because that video had an issue. It is very early, that's why my eyes look like this. Please forgive me. But yeah, I'm just re-recording it. The thing is, even though I obviously am late to the party, I do feel like there's certain things about his abilities that people might not fully understand because of how they work. And I've seen some confusion on it, so I figure I'm gonna put this up anyways. If you've been on the fence for pulling, perhaps this video will help you. So as per usual, we're gonna hop into the test server. We're gonna break down all his abilities, we're going to break down his trait, his stats, his affiliations, all that good stuff to help you see if he is right for you. So let's go ahead and hop over there and see. So the thing about Acambe is he is actually our first Destroyer class debut unit. We've had Destroyer class units you can pull on Destined banners like Barrow and Dantalion and Nungal, but he is the first debut Destroyer class unit, which is good because it basically means, you know, if you're hitting that pull on his banner, 50% chance of getting a Destroyer if you don't have one. For instance, myself, the only Destroyers I have are gold rank and lower. It's Flame Conjurer, it's Lash, it's Abyss. So I'm on the fence on whether I'm going to pull for him. I still am deciding whether I want to, but I can tell you that that is one of the reasons I'm considering it, because he plays well with one of the teams that I plan on potentially building, but not on one of the ones that I'm like guaranteed building. So that's why. We'll see. I'll let y'all know. I still got to decide. But the thing about Acambe, his class is the National Merchant. Remember, he is from Elamon if you've been playing Spiral of Destiny. He has move 3, jump 2, as per usual. He is a Destroyer, as I said. So Destroyer is weirdly like maybe the least necessary role because it does not actually innately counter anything, but it has a counter. But they're still useful to have because they tend to do some great things. And I think he qualifies for that, as we're going to see. Now, as far as his groups, he is part of Discipline, and he works very well with Discipline. Oddly, he has revealed to me a sort of level of power creep already, but we'll get into that when we get into his abilities. But he does work very well with Discipline. He is the only Destroyer class character they have access to. So if you want one with that group, you pretty much have to pull for him. He is also part of the Drifter group. Now, Drifter does have several other options for Destroyer, but it's like Abyss, you've got Flame Conjurer, or Flame Sorceress, excuse me, so obviously both of those are technically a notch down. Also Guzman, now he fulfills a very different role, even though he is a fellow Destroyer, but again, it's just saying that it's there. I still think he's good, don't misunderstand me, but he is a bit more replaceable within the Drifter class. Now, as far as his stats go, let's just get into that real quick before we touch on the heavy stuff. He is not a fast character. He is the average, high magic. His defense and HP is not great, but he has some very useful tools to mitigate damage. So he is relatively survivable despite having very pedestrian defenses and health. But he's also, like I said, he is not a super fast character. He's going to be going towards the end of your unit rotation. Not necessarily the last unit going, but pretty much towards the end there. And he is a mage type character. He wields staves as far as that's concerned. So, especially because of his usage of things like energy and whatnot, if you are someone who has put a few dollars into the game and is willing to grab it, the Cornucopia staff works really well for him because he is someone who is going to burn through energy like an MF, but that's kind of his whole thing. So to get into that, let's go into his actual trait, which is called National Merchant. Haha, I actually always like it when the trait name and their class name is the same thing. I think it's cool. But the base level version, his attack increases by 5%. His max NRG is increased to 7. As far as I'm aware, he is still the only character who just changes his max NRG. It's very cool. For every 3 NRG he owns, he gains an additional 1 NRG at the start of the turn, and when Shadow Assassin is present in battle, which is a unit he can summon, I will explain more about them as we get into his skills, he gains the Secret Signal ability, which is just an instant skill that he can use with a cooldown of 5, and that's it, that allows all the Shadow Assassins to cast the Vorpal Blade skill immediately. Basically, his whole thing is he can run up NRG like crazy. So when he has 3 NRG, he gains 2 per turn. So if he has 3, he'll hit that 7 cap just 2 turns later. Technically, if he has 6, he would gain 3, but obviously that doesn't apply here. It will apply in a bit. When we get to star level 2, this is, again, there are some characters where there are like dud levels. 2 is for him a dud, because all it does is it changes that attack boost from 5% to 10%, nothing else of value. If you are increasing him, 2 is just a stopgap on the way. Level 3 is where he gets the notable increase. His max NRG is now increased to 9, so that's where that extra level's worth comes from. So now when he has 3, he gains 2 NRG per turn. If he hits 6, he gains 3 NRG per turn. So if you can end a turn with him having 6 NRG, he'll hit that max of 9 in the next turn. So that's something to consider when doing NRG math for him. Also, his damage dealt by the Secret Signal skill is increased, and the cooldown goes from 5 turns to 3 turns. You'll start to understand why this is so important when we get into a skill build, but 3 stars is kind of the minimum you want to reach for. Absolutely, he is one of these characters who will benefit from going higher, but kind of 3 stars is his absolute floor. It's too important for him to have every NRG possible, and for him to have access to Secret Signal as much as possible. Level 4 boosts that attack boost from 10% to 15%. Again, it's a dud level. You're going for odd levels only for him. You're increasing him to 3, or you're increasing him to 5. It does not benefit him to go to the even levels nearly enough for the amount of work that goes into it. And then on the last level, his NRG stays the same, his attack boost stays the same. The main difference is that he gains an additional 3 initial NRG. So he actually starts with 5. Not the most useful thing. It's very useful for like blitzkrieging early in the fight. It is not a necessary thing. So I'm not telling you not to use it or anything like that. I'm just telling you, like, the most important level by a mile is 3 stars. You have to get him to 3 stars. From there, if you are saying, hey, I really like what he's doing, I want to push him, cool, but push him straight to 5. Like, 4 is not worth focusing on. So you're either going to 3 or to 5 with him. As far as his skills and everything, his base attack is just Energy Wave, range 2, 80% shot as per usual, and his base ability is Shadow Assassin. It is an instant skill, so remember, he can still move after using it. It costs 2 NRG, and he summons a Shadow Assassin at whatever point you put it at. And notice, it can't be in the immediately adjacent 4 cardinal directions from him, but other than that, it can go up to range 4. It does say it cannot be controlled. The Shadow Assassins actually do not act. Fun fact. They're like, I've seen some people thinking, oh, he's summoning up just a swarm of extra units with decent stats that are gonna annihilate these enemies. No. They are, the best way to think of them is, think of them like turrets, or like, security pylons or something like that. There are things you can do with them, but you're not just summoning up an army of units for 2 NRG from this dude who gains so much that can just obliterate enemies. That's not how it works. They inherit 85% of his attack and 20% of his defense and HP. Each time one of them is defeated, the cooldown of this skill is increased by 1 turn. The skill can be cast up to 2 times per round. So basically, at start of battle, you can just go ahead and pop 2 of them, for instance, or 1 of them, or whatever it is, depending on how much your starting energy is, based on your equipment loadout and things like that. And he continuously, or you can hold on so that you can try and build more NRG, but the idea is you can kind of place them in key locations. They do eventually fade away, so you want to wait until you're actually able to mess with the enemies. But as far as his actual skills go, at rank 1, your choices are between Energy Ray or Potential Burst. This is a level where I found I don't use either of the skills in my testing, but obviously You can go with whatever. I've decided that because of the nature of what he does for the team, I liked giving him potential burst in weird offshoot situations. I also understand giving him energy ray because since the summoned assassins themselves don't actually act, giving him just a quick bam button is not a bad idea. Your mileage may vary there. Potential burst gives attack 2, defense 2, and M defense 2, and dispels all debuffs from any target in range 0 to 3, so that includes him. And it lasts for 2 turns. Energy Ray is a single target blast for 140% damage, and if it attacks enemies with a shield, it deals an extra 15% damage. Not bad for either of them. I don't think you have a wrong decision there. I just also don't think there's a great decision. Rank 2, you may want to Castalia. I obviously did Castalia here. I think there is a correct choice. I just also think the other choice in the specific times when it will have application is worth it. I think the correct choice is Squander. Squander is an ability that allows you to use one of 2 different skills. So kind of like Coco's ability that expands out into several different skills. It either turns into Greed Leads to Ruin or Rich Rewards. You can use either one. It costs 3 NRG to use it. Greed Leads to Ruin is an instant skill, so you can keep moving afterwards, which lets you throw gold at a target tile. It pulls in nearby enemies and shadow assassins within 3 tiles to suck them into that point. It inflicts move down 2, magic defense down 2, and no assist skill on the enemies, and it lasts for 2 turns. So basically, if you summon a couple of assassins near an enemy and you want to pull them in so that you can then use the Vorpal Blade skill, or something along those lines, you would use that. And it also would punch up the damage you deal and stop the enemies from like getting an assist defense or something like that to protect themselves. The alternative is Rich Rewards, which is a buff skill. It restores 1 NRG to allies within 3 tiles around using it. It decreases their cooldowns by 1 turn, and it grants them attack up 2, defense up 2, and M defense up 2. And if any of summoned units happen to get caught in the range of that, they actually get attack up 4. Fun fact and something to consider. While this is obviously, you know, the summoned units thing is apparently going to be for the summoned assassins you're using before you use Vorpal Blade with them or what have you, this does also apply to Inanna's Princess Guard. Just something to keep in mind. The Inanna's Princess Guard will benefit from this, and she is part of Discipline, which is a group that he affects. So it's just something to consider, something to work with if you happen to have her. Something also that I haven't pointed out yet that I will. So like I said, the summoned assassins don't move, they don't act, they don't do anything on their own accord. The Vorpal Blade skill hits all enemies within a complete circling range. So like not just the 4 up, down, left, right, but also diagonal directions, and deals a big hit to all of them. So that just so you understand how that works. So the idea is like you place them, like I said, almost like security turrets around an enemy, and then boom, have them swing. The other rank 3 skill is Hypnosis. It's a single target attack, deals only 35% damage, but inflicts sleep for 2 turns. Now it does have a cooldown of 4 turns, but Discipline is a group that has multiple ways to access dropping cooldowns, and it costs 2 NRG. The thing about sleep is basically an enemy is just rendered useless for 2 turns. Obviously, it doesn't work against, say, weapon bosses or anything along those lines. But sleep is an incredibly useful crowd control technique. It is something to at least consider. If you happen to use Abyss for it, Acambe can replace her in that regard. So, that's why I said it's up to you, you do it. I think rank 5 is not worth Castelling, and I think it has the easiest decision in the world. Because you could choose Rage, which, whenever you're hit by an active attack, the damage taken is decreased by 8%, and after being attacked, you gain damage 2 for 3 turns. Fine. Or you can go with Special Clauses, which is if he gets attacked, if there is a summoned unit within 3 tiles of him, he just swaps with the summoned unit up to twice per round. I would rather take no damage than 8% reduced damage, and your summons are kind of just should be used as tools anyways. So you absolutely want to go with Special Clauses. There should regularly be some summons available to him, so rank 7 is interesting. Rank 7, I feel you should Castalia unless you have a very, very specific aversion to one of the abilities. But rank 7 is where I learned, again, power creep, because I've said before, Leonide has the advanced leadership aura for discipline, because it's attack plus 10%, defense plus 20%, and it lowers cooldowns of all skills with a cooldown of 4 or more by 1. Acambe has the leadership aura for discipline that gives attack plus 10%, defense plus 10%, cooldowns of 4 or more reduced by 1, and damage dealt by summoned units is increased by 20%. So his is just a straight upgrade of Leonard. If you put him in, if you happen to be running discipline, you can actually remove the leadership aura from Leonide because they don't stack even slightly, and give him another ability or something like that, and it works well. So that's why it's like, if you do want to run discipline, he's worth considering, because again, that damage dealt increased by 20% also applies to Inanna and her Princess Guard, and Inanna's part of discipline. So it's just something to keep in mind. There's also Burning Riches. Burning Riches is, I think, a skill you absolutely have to do. It has a huge AoE in front of you. It knocks back the first enemy in each row, dealing 90% damage. The enemies that would be in the same rows behind them don't take the direct damage, but they do get damaged by knockback. If, you know, any of the enemies are in front of them, get sent flying back. They get knocked back by 2 tiles, and in the 3x1 area directly in front of him, it summons a set of Shadow Assassins. But after attacking, he gets no NRG restored for 2 turns. So it does kind of lock in his NRG at whatever it is, and that's something to consider. It has a cooldown of 5, although if he's in Discipline, that means cooldown of 4, and it has a cost of 3 NRG. This is a very useful, very powerful skill. You just have to understand that it does have limitations to its usage, but this is kind of like his more capstone level attack from where I am. At rank 9, you can choose between the different attacks. I personally like Disarm Strike, because charged attack is just the same as normal energy wave, 80% damage with a 1 or 2 range, but it increases the damage of your next skill by 15%. A bunch of the damage he does is via other units, so that doesn't really benefit you. Disarm Strike deals 80% magical damage and inflicts attack down 1 on the target. Especially because he'll be swapping out with the summoned units, things like that. I think it's personally worth it to get the debuff in there. Your mileage may vary. If you want to get the extra 15%, that will mostly just apply to future attacks. Theoretically might buff the damage on a Burning Riches. Sure, I think you're better off getting Disarm Strike and having him be able to debuff enemies while dealing damage and things like that. As far as his rank 11 capstone, I didn't play with it because I honestly think it is basically... like, it is a very simple decision. Dark Ripple is a big AoE, deals 70% damage to all enemies within a 2-tile radius of the target, and inflicts no passive skills and no reaction skills, lasting for 2 turns. That's fine if that's what you want to do, but he already has the ability to hit AoE with proper placement of his assassins and, you know, drumming up several Vorpal Blades. Whereas on the flip side, Darkest Annihilation hits any unit within 1 to 2 range for 180% damage, and it has armor piercing, so it ignores 40% of the target's relevant defense before attacking. That is just an amount of damage you can't ignore. That is for when you're dealing with, say, a weapon boss or something like that, and you have a cooldown on your Vorpal Blade. That is what you pop in between to deal a massive chunk of damage, especially if you get them down into injured first or something like that. I think it's an easy decision. I guess if you really want to run crowd control with him, you can run Hypnosis and run Dark Ripple. Maybe you put on charged attack, hit an enemy first, then pop a Dark Ripple to deal 85% AoE damage. I guess that's an option. I just don't think that's the best use of who he is or what he does. I think Darkest Annihilation is the no questions asked decision of what you should go with for Acambe. So my personal build that I landed on with him that I've had the most fun with in my testing is I give him Disarm Strike for his attack, I give him Special Clauses for his reaction, and then Shadow Assassin is kind of too integral to what he does. You have to leave that on there. Burning Riches is his big attack, and then Squander gives him some versatility. I think that's the build you're going to have the most fun with, and basically I let him pop out there, and then I let him build up NRG a little bit, get closer to the enemies, then either A, start summoning Shadow Assassins and pop his Vorpal Blade, or B, throw out Burning Riches if I've got some energy built up before the enemies get there, and then go ahead and, you know, hit the enemy group, and now I have some Shadow Assassins the enemies are going to try and run into. I can pop Vorpal Blade after that. I can buff myself along the way, debuff the enemies. There's a lot of fun you can play with it. Acambe is a great unit. He just is. I think, however, he's also a very unique unit in terms of his playstyle, which is a double-edged sword. It's very good if you want something different, and there will be battles that will be able to be completely neutralized by his ability to basically place Shadow Assassins in specific points, and then just a Vorpal Blade and deal damage in areas that normally you would have to get behind, or to be able to hit exploding boxes in weird areas or things like that. There will be maps in the Tower of Adversity and things like that that will be trivialized by his skill set. And so that could be really, really worth it. But the flip side is he also can be less useful than other characters than you would think. You know, if you're thinking of something like the weapon bosses, as said, the battle where it's like, oh, you don't want to use melee characters here. Well, a bunch of his stuff relies on being able to lay down these Shadow Assassins in specific areas, which can require him to be positioned in a way, but it can also mean that attacks are coming their way that you're not necessarily planning around. It takes up space. It's a whole thing. Same idea for the one where you want to attack with melee characters. Well, now you're putting these Shadow Assassins there, and they're gonna have to take up space that other melee characters would take, so it's imperfect, right? Granted, that's just one type of battle, but I'm just trying to give you the idea that he has a unique skill set. It will fit certain things amazingly. It is not one size fits all. Someone like Beryl or Sophia is ultimately one size fits all, other than like Beryl does not work where you're not allowed to use mages. Sophia does not work where you're allowed to use physical characters. Granted, obviously, I just laid out, they're not one size fits all, but I guess they're a bit more one size fits all, if that makes sense, versus Acambe. I still think he's good. I think he's amazing. As far as the ratings would go, if you're building Discipline, I would say Discipline is a group that I feel like no one is building purely. That's the only thing they're building. But on the off chance that I'm wrong, obviously you'll want to go ahead and grab him. If you are building Discipline, I would say he's a 9.5 out of 10. Because of the fact that his only boost over Leonide is the summoned unit boost, which, mind you, does apply to different characters. So there's some options there. You know, your mileage may vary, but I would say if you're building for Discipline, he's a 9.5 out of 10. He provides a really, really cool, powerful boost, but he isn't necessary, right? He isn't, you can still do Discipline without him. So 9.5 to me means like he is great, he is awesome. You probably should grab him if you are building this group, but he isn't necessary to see the group reach its absolute maximum potential. If you are doing Drifter, on the other hand, I would say he's probably about an 8.5. He's great, he provides something really cool, he provides something really unique to the group, but he is not necessary, again, by any means. Though I will say he provides a destroyer that focuses more on damage, as opposed to Guzman, who tends to be more of a magic defense tank. You can honestly run the two of them together. I understand it gives you a bit of a weakness to Watcher-type characters, but outside of that, like, they fulfill very different niches, despite being in the same role, so it's something worth considering. And out of everything, if you are just grabbing to get yourself a destroyer, grabbing to get yourself someone who can deal some damage, something along those lines, I would say Acambe is probably going to be about an 8 out of 10. He is right on the range of, I would say he's worth grabbing for, even if you're not building for any of his groups. Just understand that he is not the linchpin necessarily. Right? He is not one of those characters where I would say, even if you're not building for his group, go ahead and draw for him, because he's that unbelievably useful. Because his use will come in specific times. But those times it's weird, because his use on those times will be a 10 out of 10. And on other times will be like a 4 out of 10, where you're just like making it work. So I'm kind of trying to thread the needle there. I think he's an 8 out of 10 because there will be maps where he is so unbelievably useful, it's just, you have to go for it. But I think there will also be plenty of maps where it's like, I'm going to leave Acambe at home. That's my personal feeling there. But you let me know. What are your thoughts on it? What do you believe? Are you going to be trying to draw Acambe? Are you going to be trying to grab him? Are you going to be trying to work him into your team? Shout out down below. Let me know if you're pulling for him. Let me know if you have any other ones specifically that you plan on pulling for soon that you're looking forward to. And other than that, please leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscription if you haven't. All that good YouTube stuff. And as per usual, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I thank y'all. Until next time, I'll catch you later, fam. All right.